Supply chains across the hemisphere, frankly, of course, around the world, are under incredible pressure due to COVID-19. Shortages, demand reduction, price swings, and other upheaval. With vaccines now coming online, still, what will be the short-term and long-term impact on supply chains of the pandemic, and how are they being reshaped, and what are the implications for regional competitiveness?
The Biden-Harris administration is going to have to engage in a way that the previous administration has not. And to do that, you must ensure that we have solid, productive, economic, and viable relationships with our most trusted partners and neighbors in Latin America.
The pandemic clearly has been a global event. It has woken us all up to all sorts of different threats. It's raised all sorts of other questions about supply chains as well. I mean, where are they when it comes, or how do they fit in terms of efforts to address the environment, social issues, and governments, those kind of ESG goals that we all are starting to think a lot more about.
So, we're talking about supply chain disruption and the need to rebuild more nimble and reliable supply chains. But as we do that, companies are also going to be thinking about being focused on longer-term sustainability initiatives when they're reimagining their supply chains, right?
And also look at how we can be better using new technologies to modernize and strengthen supply, especially as the previous panel mentioned, as we prepare for a second wave of COVID infections after the holidays.
The economic consequences of the pandemic are going to be here far longer. And there are many chances that this could happen again. So the first and perhaps the only, so as to leave enough time, recommendation that I would do is to make sure that in addition to the geopolitical risk, to the technology risk, or any of the other elements that companies are naturally more familiar with, now you have to factor this in any planning that you do going forward.
When you think of areas like trade facilitation, it's such a great example where both with best practices and what we learned to make customs more efficient, as well as better using technology. One of the best outcomes in the new USMCA agreement was just building in digital technologies to customs processing.
I think that governments and the private sector need to work on developing and adopting common regulatory standards and creating a conducive regulatory ecosystem that enables the deployment of technology, the flourishment of entrepreneurship and innovation.
The public sector and the private sector need to come together, have coordinated plans and approaches, whether it's in production or distribution. For the supply chain transformation that we're seeing as a result of this pandemic, that integration is truly critical.